I'm Caroline Lancaster, the Ag Agent in Hertford County, and today we're at the Peanut Belt Research Station for the CHROME Regional Ag Expo. Behind me we have our corn fertility treatment and placement plots, and Dr. Heiniger is going to talk about them.
All right, here we are at the CHROME plot here at the Peanut Belt Research Station just outside Lewiston. It is June the 4th, and we're looking at this test in which we are trying to look at the environment for uptake. That's the key here. We're looking at fertilizer. And of course, you guys all know the 4 R's of fertilizer. You know, right place, placement, the right source, the right rate, the right timing. Well, I want to talk about the right environment for uptake here. And so that's what we're doing here with this test. We're looking at this environment. So we're going to look at 11 treatments that we've applied here to try to influence the root and growth of this plant to provide the environment for nutrient uptake. So the best place to start is at the beginning here today. So we're going to look here at the check treatment. So this doesn't look too doggone bad for June 4th here. We're basically at the V5-6 stage or coming along there. So we're not too bad, but there's the check. There's what it looks like. Let's step over and look at a plant in a little more detail, because if we're going to influence the environment, we want to influence the main thing that is associated with the environment, and that's the root system of the plant. So there's what we look at. Just for your education, here at in the bottom we can see the seed piece attached here to one of these root filaments. That's the main root of the plant here. That doesn't look like much, and it doesn't grow to be very much here. The main roots are what you see here around the crown, and that's the nodal root system of this plant. So you can see here we got quite a few nodal roots already starting out here. There's a few root hairs on this. In fact, if you look over here on the side here, you can see some root hairs on this plant. So there's what the check looks like. There's a good start to a corn plant here at this treatment. Now we move to the next stage of looking at how we're influencing the root environment and the uptake environment for nutrients here. We've applied a treatment now, and that treatment is 6-24-6, a common in-furrow fertilizer. 6% nitrogen, 24% phosphorus, 6% potassium, so it's a nice blended fertilizer there at 3 gallons to the acre in furrow. So now you can take a look at these plants here. Couple things you'll note if you're looking at the video now, you should be able to tell they're a little taller. We can see that actually over here on this board a little better where we've taken a plant and of course compared it to our check now that we just took earlier here. You can see that this plant is taller than the check plant here. How about the root system, the environment for the uptake? So in other words, we have influenced the nutrients of the plant here. So we compare the root systems here. Not a huge difference. Not a huge difference there. Maybe a little more root mass, and there's quite a few of these nodal roots coming off here on this 6-24-6. Maybe helped it a little bit. So in addition to the height advantage here, it helped that nodal root system just a little bit there. Now we move to the third treatment of the 11 plots that we have here. And here's another common, well, maybe not so common application. This is a 2x2 band, except that it's not. It's actually a 3x2x2 band of fertilizer. In this case, 10 gallons to the acre of a 10-27-0. It also has some zinc and sulfur, so I got micros involved in that fertilizer. So we're placing, the key here is we're placing the bands now on both sides of the row. It's not in furrow, where we could influence germination or emergence. It's now off that furrow, but now we're trying to make sure we got plenty of nutrient in that zone where those roots are coming out of those nodal roots, and we're putting it in a band on each side of the row. This is striking here on June the 4th. I mean, you don't have to look at this very, very long, and you realize there's something very, very different about these plants here. They're very much taller. They got a lot more roots. We'll take a look at that in a second here. But very big differences here in June 4th of this double-sided band at 10 gallons to the acre in this thing. So even as we talk about the right environment for uptake, the factors that influence the fertilizer use, in this case placement, are still critical to keep in mind. We're trying to place nutrients as close to the seed as possible without interfering with germination and emergence. And that's what this double-sided band is all about. Let's take a look at the roots on this thing compared. As I said earlier, there's not a whole lot of, you don't have to imagine anything here. There's no imagining going on here. You just take one look and you can see there's a difference here. These plants are in the same growth stage. This isn't advanced growth. There's 2 more leaves. No, they're the same number of leaves here, just bigger. The leaves are wider, longer. The roots, you can see clearly here, a lot more root mass, a lot more root hairs here coming off of this plant. So indeed, this placement, yes, we're using more than the 624-6 at 3 gallons in furrow, but this placement obviously is making a difference here. At this 4th treatment here, and if you didn't think placement, I just mentioned placement with the last, if you didn't think placement was the key there, if you thought perhaps it was the amount of fertilizer we were using or something like that, why, here's a good example of what I was talking about. This is, again, 1027-0 placed in a 2x2 bed, so it's only placed on one side of the row at twice the rate that we just looked at there. So as we look at this plot, again, you see similar to the 624-6, and that certainly has been what we've seen in the past. The in-furrow and the side-by-side often look very similar, even though we're putting higher rates over here. But it certainly doesn't look as good as where we placed it now on both sides of the row. We're going to look at the roots here, and on this board, why I've put the 3 plants here instead of just the double comparison. So we got the check, we've got the this treatment I just looked at, the 20 gallons of 1027-0 placed in a 2x2 bed. Certainly, yes, better than the check. There's no doubt about that. More roots than the check. Clearly that's an advantage there in providing a better environment for uptake. But then here's the placement. And again, you take a look at that, you can see the clear differences in both the height as well as the root mass on these plants. Placement at 10 gallons versus 20 in a 2x2, placement at 10 gallons in a 3x2x2. So again, this placement issue with providing that nutrient to that seed early enough to make a difference. That seed doesn't need a lot of fertilizer. It sure doesn't. But it needs it in concentration enough to allow that pericarp and those early roots to absorb and get started and utilize that in a way that develops more tissue and certainly more roots. So we see that here. Now we're again looking at in-furrow, but we're looking at in-furrow in a different way. We're adding some micronutrients. We're looking at fulvic or humic acids to enhance the function of that fertilizer. Many growers are looking at doing something like that, and we've seen some advantages to looking at fulvic or humic acid. So here we have a product, Black Label Zinc. It's got some humic acid in it. It's got zinc, as the name implies there. So it's a 620-0 with a little zinc here added to that. Again, this is in-furrow treatment at 3 gallons to the acre. Looks good. It looks good in this test, and that's what we've seen on sandy soils. That zinc seems to have some positive impact on nutrient uptake early in the season. Let's take a look at the roots on this one. So here we have, again, the check to start out with. Here's this Black Label Zinc here, and again, that looks a lot like that 20 gallons of 1027-0 in the 2x2 bed we just looked at over there. And you can see that that's why we think we can go with maybe lower rates in furrow. Now, again, the reason we can get away with in-furrow here is now we're using a humic acid. It buffers the salt effect of the fertilizer, and we're using low rates here. So it looks pretty good. Consider the root system here. Again, looks very good compared to our check over here. And then I put this 1027-0 in a 2x2 band here as a comparison. Very similar looking plants. All right, here's treatment number 6. And if you think this is just they made a mistake in editing this video and this is a repeat of what I just said for treatment 5, you're mistaken. because this is a different treatment. It's levitate. It's a 5-15-5 fertilizer. It does have some, in this case it's fulvic instead of humic acid. Plus it contains a little bacteria material to try to stimulate bacteria function around this root system here. So that's the levitate product. And you can see again we've used it at 3 gallons an acre in furrow. So very similar to the Black Label Zinc in terms of rates and placement here. It looks the same, doesn't it? Looks very, very similar. We can see that again as we go to our board here and look at those root systems. You would think that I had just pulled the same plant and repeated using it, but here's the check, here's the levitate, and again, you can see we're making some difference here in these root systems compared to the check there. And then here, of course, is the standard that I'm going to compare against, and that's this 20 gallons of a 10-27-0 in a 2x2 band. Quite frankly, this is often the treatment that I recommend is a 20-gallon rate in a 2x2 band. You need the higher rate to get these effects here. And as you can see, this 3-gallon looks very similar to this levitate treatment here, just as it did to the Black Label Zinc earlier. So again, showing some of the things that we've seen in trials with these products and the other cases. The use of the fulvic or humic acids. I like the zinc on a sandy soil here with the levitate. Why that does not, well, it has some zinc in it as well, but it's a little different formulation. All right, to treatment 7 here, and we're back now to looking at a 2x2 banded treatment. But instead of 20 gallons, we drop back to 10. And this is a good illustration of concentration, the issue of concentration of that nutrient around the seed to make that change in the growth pattern of this plant that we're looking for to influence uptake. So you can see this doesn't look quite as good as the levitate or the Black Label Zinc products over there. It looks a little weaker. It doesn't look as good as where we put down 20 gallons in a 2x2 band. And you can see that again fairly starkly here as we look at our board to compare these plants and how they've grown to this point. Again, there's our check. That's our standard we're looking against. Here's the treatment we're just looking at here. This is 10 gallons. Certainly has had some effect. I mean, 10 gallons, that's a $30-some treatment there. Certainly we would hope that would have some positive impact, and certainly it has. Here's 20 gallons. And that 20 gallons is a little better, isn't it? 10 is just not quite enough. It just doesn't quite, I mean, it helps, but it just isn't quite enough. We need to go to a little higher rate to see that full effect there. And that's been the problem with the 2x2 band, is we've got to go to 15, 20 gallons oftentimes to get really what we're after, which is the advanced growth here, development of this plant.